Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for being here. I especially want to thank the Chamber for everything they've done to set this up. Christy and her crew have done a fantastic job here. It's also nice to be back here in the Christ Life Center. Thanks, Jim. We really appreciate being in the venue. Although Christy made me promise I wouldn't make any jokes about wanting a good steak. So if I stay clear of that, I think I'll be okay. I also need to thank Pete and Molly and the team at Clive for putting together the materials that you have in front of you. We'll be talking about those. My hope today is that no one who watched the State of the Union address got any ideas from Marjorie Taylor Greene on how to be a member of the audience. Just to be clear, we will take your questions, so there's no need to heckle. And when I say we, I mean, whenever you have a tough question, I'll pass it to either Pete or Matt or one of the council members. So I've got that covered. What we want to start with is our citizen satisfaction survey. And the presenter that I'm using has a slight delay or even a long delay. And so Pete will probably have to advance these manually. So I will practice saying, next slide. And we'll see if that will work for us. So anyway, we have our citizen satisfaction survey, and we'll do that. We do this every couple of years. And this year you'll have the opportunity, at least some of you will be asked to participate. And I have two requests for you. If you get that solicitation, one is that you complete the survey and do it by the deadline. And then secondly, if you could do it online. In 2022, we had 40% of the respondents do it in paper, which is a real, seems archaic, but it's a real pain for compilation. So if you do get that request, if you could be sure to complete it by the deadline and do so online, we would appreciate that. So in that survey, and we do this so that we can get the pulse of our constituents. We have a feel for what areas we're doing well and the areas in which we need to improve. And if you look in the upper right on your handout there, you'll see the areas that Clive residents think are most important and the ones that we are addressing the best. That is in areas of safety, parks and rec, economy, and the natural environment. So those are the key areas of concern. Next slide. On specific areas, as far as high quality, you can see Clive is a place to live, 97%. Overall quality of life, 95%. Overall economic health, 92%. Where we are above the benchmark of comparable cities. So we're very pleased to have results like that. Next slide. And then if you look at those survey results, as far as our ability to keep the trust of our residents and businesses, again, out of the hundreds of cities that were surveyed on these same questions, you can see where Clive ranked in the top 10 as far as customer satisfaction, public information services, treating all residents fairly, and treating them with respect. So those are the areas where we want to be able to continue to be able to do good things in those areas. The next slide indicates where we are in some of the other areas, again, near the top, as far as value of the services you get for your taxes, the direction that the city's taking, keeping residents informed, confidence in government, being honest, and so forth. So again, we want to be able to continue doing the kind of things that receive positive feedback and are just the basics of good government. We'll move on from that and look at some of the council's key goals. Each summer, we do strategic planning. We spend more than a week, many hours, the council and staff identifying what our goals should be for the coming year. And as we look at those goals, one of the key things we want to do is ensure that Clive is a great place to live, safe and beautiful neighborhoods, and continues to be the premier location in the metro. We also want to make sure we have strong financial stewardship, and we do that with our budgeting process each year. And we want to be sure that we have resilient facilities. And as you know, even from our logo, how important the green belt is to us. So we want to be stewards of that as well. So after we went through the strategic planning process, we identified these priorities for the year. Street reinvestments, and we'll talk more in detail about the millions of dollars we're spending on streets. Stream restoration, park development, particularly Linnan Park and the 86th Street neighborhoods, the Harbach Center, the Greenbelt Landing, expanding our communications capabilities, and Molly is here, one of our newest hires. We appreciate the work she's already done on that. We'll be hiring a new police chief, so we're going to be involved in that over the next couple of months. One of the most impactful projects for all of you will be the Hickman Road I-3580 interchange, and that will be a multi-year project. And so you've got that to either look forward to or deal with. It'll be great when it's done. Multi-million-dollar project. And we continue to address those flood-prone properties that we have in the city, where we're buying those up and turning those into green space. We do a comparison city study with other cities, do long-term financial forecasting. And again, this year we'll do that relevant survey. So those are the priorities that the council has established and will take us forward. What we're going to do next, we talked about our police department. Again, we'll be hiring a new chief, but also want to make sure that we are able to hire the police officers. It's a very competitive environment. And so this is a video that has been prepared. Molly was very involved with this, as was Pete. And we just want to show this short video, if technology cooperates, so that you can see what we're doing as far as recruiting police officers. So Pete, we'll cross our fingers and click play and hope we've got audio.
Two rounds standing, 3 kneeling. Lines ready, move!
I am tight always.
I became a police officer because I like thinking outside of the box. I like dealing with new, unique challenges every day. It's nice waking up not knowing what you're going to be doing at work. You gotta be thinking on your feet at all times.
I chose this career field for an opportunity to really make a difference in the community. Clive PD has really done a great job at recognizing the diversity amongst all of the patrol officers. Clive PD has really helped embrace my background, my specialties, and I come to work confident and satisfied that there are other people here in this agency who have different specialties that I can call on them if I have questions in those areas, and vice versa.
My team at Clive is always pushing me to become the best officer I can. Whether it's in my daily duties, in training, and answering any questions I have, they're always there for me. Just making sure that I have everything that I need to serve and protect my community every day.
The camaraderie here is really great. I love it. Every day I'm happy to show up to work. I'm excited to show up to work because of the people that I work with. The field training officers here are great. They walk you through everything step by step. They're always there to answer questions. All around, the field training officers here are really professional and help us out a lot.
It might not be the biggest department, but it has just the same opportunities as a larger department, whether that is working crime scene investigation, TAC team, there's working K9. We have just as many specialty positions as any other department.
All right, so the 24-25 budget, our goal here was to keep the taxes fair and predictable and maintain adequate cash reserves, 25% cash balance, because we have to deal with changes that impact us and be able to fund what is essential. That is, we deal with changes that come from the state legislature, housing market, economic environment, that all impacts the revenue that the city has to deal with. So for 8 consecutive years, we've maintained our property tax rate at $10.14 per thousand. And for 23-24, our expenditure should be about $25 million. We budget conservatively, and we don't expect our expenses to reach the budgeted amount. So we generally have some cost savings there, and we use reserves to cover the differences that do occur. So if we take a look at where we are in comparison to our neighboring communities, on the far right there, we see Des Moines, which is $16.61 per thousand. Then if you come to the left here, you'll see Clive is one of the lowest in the metros, $9.92, with our 22-cent reduction this coming year in what our tax rate is going to be. So next slide will give you a little bit idea. If you had a $318,000 house, it shows you what the current taxes would be on that house, and then our decrease of almost 9% for the typical $318,000 house. Businesses also are getting a break as well. Basically, they're dead even. If you take a look at a business evaluation, the increase of 0.1%. So, and that's on $1 million business. So that's an increase of $20, $19.32. So I think that's pretty well break even on that. So we're very proud to be able to present this budget for the coming years, showing a decrease for the cost of a homeowner, and then again, break even for businesses. The other thing I really want to emphasize here is on the next slide, is when you get your property tax bill, be sure to flip it over to the back so you can see what portion of your taxes goes to the city, the school board, or the school district, and Polk County or Dallas County. So here, as you can see, if you're in Waukee, when you get your property tax bill, about 30% goes to the city of Clive, 54% goes to the Waukee School District, and then about 9% to Dallas County. On the Polk County side of things, about 38% goes to West Des Moines schools, 30% to Clive, and then 20% to Polk County. So again, be sure to flip over your tax bill. People, they talk about their tax bill being very high. Clive's portion is just 30%. Okay. Some of you may have received in the mail this week the truth and taxation letter demanded that required by the legislature. It's a little complicated. We were required to have a public hearing on our tax rate. And we've scheduled that for April 11th at 5:15 p.m. And this messaging that you'll get goes through the detail of the different property taxes. Looking at it, it looks, I think, fairly complicated and maybe not easy to understand, but you're welcome to come on the 11th and we'll explain it in detail. And we can answer questions at the end as well. Now, as far as the capital operating budgets, you can see how it's split between capital, which is about 42%, and then operating budget is 58%. So that's $38 million for capital, $54 million for our operating budget. So operating, we've got personnel, facilities. Capital is where we utilize funds for major improvements. And the budget is a 35% increase from the prior year. Operating budget increased 5%, capital budget increased 35% because we've got a lot of capital expenditures to deal with. So if you look at the general fund breakdown, you'll see how we divide up what we spend. So public safety has the lion's share with 37%, culture and rec, 22%, general government, 15%, public works, 13%, capital projects, just about 6%, economic development, about 4.5%, transfers, adjustments there, 3%, and then a small share for health and human services. Yeah, if you take a look at our capital improvement plan, this outlines over $100 million in expenditures over the next 5 years, dealing with streets, parks, water, sewers, stormwater. Now, because our community approved the local option service and services, sales and services tax laws, that gives us a very strong position in being able to do these things. Our priorities as far as our investments include $17 million in 24-25 alone for street improvements. Unfortunately, we're seeing our streets not hold up as long as we would like, so we're having to spend a lot of money on street improvements. $11 million over the next 5 years for street improvements. So 17 million next year alone, and then 11 million. We're also redeveloping Lannan Park, Indian Hills Woods, and Rio Valley Park. We've got Circina Park coming online this summer. And we've got significant improvements in Greenbelt with Greenbelt Landing, Porter Shelter, Campbell Park, and the bridge at Campbell Park. And we've got investment in developing portions of 5, and then our flood mitigation, where we're doing the buyouts, takes a good deal of funding as well. Now, the next slide talks about our capital investments. That $38 million shows you how that's broken down. Again, the lion's share is going for streets, parks, flood mitigation, internal and equipment, municipal buildings. That's the lion's share, but it breaks it down for you so you get the details there. Next up, we got the street projects that we've mentioned where we're spending a lot of money. And so we've got to cover the older streets where we've got some major work on those. We've got Hickman Road and interchange. We've got Alice's Road. We're doing asphalt overlays in Country Club, and then the regular patching that we're doing. A big change will come as we work on 111th and 114th. And that will begin in mid-May and go through the fall, which means it's going to change access to City Hall, the Aquatic Center, the library, where you'll have to come from the south to access that. So it's going to impact the businesses that you see indicated there, where folks who visit those businesses have to be aware of how to get there in the road closure there. So that'll be a biggie that we'll communicate more about, make sure everyone's aware of. The big project that'll be starting here is the Greenbelt Landing. That's an $11 million project. We've got details you can see when you go to Greenbelt Landing at the link there. We're all excited about the improvements that we'll see there. It's going to be a transformative project. And just to mention something we mention every council meeting is that we follow the pillars of character counts. And that's those are our guiding principles in everything that we do as a council and as a staff. So, kind of sum up here, we're going to be committed to continuing to deliver the high quality services that we used to see. We want to make sure our tax rate is fair and predictable. And for the typical client household, again, you're going to see a decrease of about $260 from the prior year. And for business, again, it's going to be about a wash for $1 million business, just an increase of $19.32. Now, all of this is possible thanks to the hard work of our council. And we do have some of our council members here. Michael McCoy. Again, you can hold your applause. Thank you very much. Eric Klein. Ted Weaver. You can applaud if you like. So they and our other council members work very hard on the budget and on delivering the services that we have to the city. So with that, we're ready to take questions. So what questions do you have about the presentation and anything else? The floor is open, and we have a mic that you can pass around if need be. And I suppose I should give my fellow council members the opportunity to say something, since as an elected official, there's seldom an occasion that would pass where they would not want to say something.
Sure.
And we'll start with Council Member McCoy. Again, you do not need to say anything, so you can pass the mic if you choose.
Well, I don't want to take much time. Eric will take all the time that he needs here, but I am excited about the future for the plans we have, both in the roads, but really in the parks and rec. And I think you're going to see a huge transformation. More so, I mean, on the east side, in Linan Park, and it's ready to. It's been ready for years to redevelop, and so you're going to see that. That's going to be exciting for the neighborhood. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. One of the key things I think looking at this budget is just, what we're doing with the roads. This is tremendous investment put in here. And like the mayor talked about, they need to be done, and this is a key aspect of what the public expects and plans. Expect good roads, clean the snow, and I think we're checking the box and working hard to do that. The other thing is we talked a little bit about the parks, and I think you're going to really like what we're going to do with the aquatic center. This is coming on board pretty quick. This is really a lot of different additions you're going to find. So glad to be part of the Icon Water Trails, and thanks for coming.
Yeah, let me give a little bit more detail on the Hickman Road interchange. That's going to be a biggie, and it's going to impact all of us. I think this year we don't have all the specifics on the timing, but this year is going to be a lot of the planning. But a lot of the construction is going to start in 25. So you can expect that interchange is going to shut down at certain times where you can't get off onto Hickman Road. And if you're on Hickman and you need to get on the interstate, you're going to have to detour. And this is going to be like a 3-year construction project. The interchange won't be shut down for that long, but there will be periods, and it's going to be very disruptive. So you think traffic's bad now? Right. University Avenue, I live right off University Avenue. It's going to be a mess. So I think we just need to all be mentally prepared for that. And then the great news is that not too far after that, they're probably going to be doing University Avenue interchange.
Weaver, we're trying to have enough.
So, yes. So just be prepared. We're trying to mentally deal with it on our end because we know we're gonna hear a lot on that. So anyways.
Thank you, Ted. Matt?
Just to add to Councilmember Weaver's comments, one thing that you'll see, because we know that there will be some detours happening with the Hickman interchange construction over the next 3 years minimum, it'd probably be closer to 4 years when all that work is said and done. As you'll see a lot of, and this is to the mayor's point in his presentation about the investments we're making in road rehabilitation. So we're anticipating that detour routing, and you'll see a lot of concrete patching, panel replacement work happening on University and 128th Street here in this summer. I'm kind of preparing, knowing that we're going to see some enhanced traffic along those corridors once the detours start. The official detours will likely be up to Douglas and Urbandale, but we all know people will find, you know, the path of least resistance when some of those detours start. And it'll be kind of staggered on which on-ramps, off-ramps will be closed while they're working on the Hickman interchange, and the Hickman itself will be the last part of the project, likely 2027, maybe even a little bit into 2028. And that will have maybe for a brief time period, we don't know how long yet, where Hickman will be completely closed under the interstate when they're working under the bridges. But by that point, all the interstate ramps and everything will be redone. But a lot more details to be worked out. DOT is still working on the phasing. It's a DOT-led project of how that's all going to be. But it'll be impactful. But again, I think it's just to reemphasize the amount of street reinvestment that's happening in this community. It's the city street system that we've outlined today in this presentation, but also the state and federal system that is getting reinvested in. And one thing to know with the Hickman Interchange project too, that's really important, and how the cities of Clive and Urbandale have been working together as a part of that project, is there's going to be a great separated crossing for bikes and pedestrians as associated with that rebuild of that interchange. This is a $100 million project. It's very big. And so on the north side of Hickman, you'll have bridges, over on-ramps, a tunnel under the interstate. We'll have a tunnel underneath Hickman Road west of the interstate between the truck stop and Lifetime there for people to get down to the Greenbelt Trail. So a huge improvement to bike and pedestrian traffic through that, much safer through that corridor, along with some investment in the roadways. And also the two cities have been working together on landscaping enhancements and kind of wayfinding and aesthetic enhancements to that interchange to make it a very inviting entrance into both of our communities. So I just wanted to add that onto the Hickman interchange, the uplift that part for you all. Thanks.
Pete, would you like to say a word or two?
One of the reasons why we're able to achieve really good outcomes for residents and businesses in Clive is because we have excellent partners like the Chamber. So I would just like to briefly say thank you to all of you for your input, for your ideas, for your generosity with your time, contributing to any number of projects going on in the city of Clive. We'll need that volunteer spirit. We'll need that good energy as we go into this very exciting next chapter in Clive's story, where we're making historic investments and setting our neighborhoods up to continue to be the places where businesses and families thrive.
Pete, do you want to explain why we have to spend so much money on streets?
There are a number of reasons. And I'll look to my boss here to set me straight here if I get this wrong, Mayor, but there are some things that are sort of out of our control when it comes to streets. The weather, it can take a real toll. We also had a little bit of bad luck with an entire generation of streets that were built in Clive due to some poor aggregate material that went into those streets that are now falling apart sooner than we thought they were going to. You get dealt these kinds of things, can't control the cards all the time, but we can choose to play those cards strategically moving forward. So if we're rebuilding a street, we can also at that same time, if we do things right, get the water underneath that street, get the storm sewer underneath that street, do it all at once so we don't have to go back later and tear up brand new concrete to put in more infrastructure. So that thoughtfulness that we bring to the work extends where our dollars can go and hopefully sets us up to, at times disrupt the neighborhoods, but do it only when we need to and not over and over and over again after every single construction season. With that, I do want to say thank you to anybody who lives in the Clark Street neighborhoods, because that is a place where we've been particularly active with a number of projects, infrastructure projects. But we look like we've reached sort of the plateau, I think, for that neighborhood as we're working there. So,
Thank you.
The question, who inspects, like when they put down new cement in your neighborhood, who inspects to make sure they're putting the right stuff down? So I live in Urbandale and they patched our street last summer and it's already looking up and I'm sure they're gonna come tear it up again. So like, how do you know the guys who hired are gonna put the right stuff down? Let's check it.
see how quickly I handle that off.
I knew that was coming. So it's a great question because cities handle this differently. Not every city is the same. I can't speak to how Urbandale does it necessarily, but how we do it in Clive is we have our own staff that are doing it. So when a concrete street, this is going to get way nerdy probably for a minute, so just bear with me. When a concrete street is laid, we have our own staff that are inspecting the contractor's work to make sure they're pouring it correctly. They're pouring it, the temperature isn't too cold, because it can't be too cold for concrete because it'll make it brittle too fast. And when a new concrete street is poured, we actually take a core out of the street. You take a piece of the concrete out and it's put and it's tested with PSI testers basically, and it's not supposed to break until a certain PSI level. So we do that level of checking ourselves, and our contractors that we work with have to prove that. And our staff is watching those pours as they're happening. For example, I'll give you an example of where we have a few spots in the Harbach reconstruction project, phase 1 that was done over the last couple of years. We have some pours in there that we know we've got some issues with some of those, that concrete because it didn't meet those testing. That contractor has to come back and fix that. So they'll have to tear it out and redo it. But that's our way of checking it. So I can't speak to how Urbandale, because you'll have that flaking off if you let that, pour aggregate go through. And particularly for the Country Club West neighborhoods, those are the neighborhoods that Pete was referring to that were done in the 90s, early to mid 90s. We had a lot of poor aggregate and some of those things weren't caught in an inspection. And I don't want to speak to how those processes were done in the 90s because I wasn't here, but we weren't the only community to experience some of that in that time period. But because of that, 30 to 35 year streets, and then now we're hoping to design streets that can last 50 years, we're having some of those streets start to crumble a lot faster than they should. So what you're going to see in those neighborhoods, particularly this year, is we're going to start doing more asphalt overlays in those neighborhoods because, to Pete's point, the utilities underneath the street aren't necessarily ready for full replacement. The road reconstructions that you're seeing in this part of the community, like Harbach and Clark and 99th Court and 114th and 11th Street that you'll see this year, those have utilities to be replaced underneath the street. So it makes sense to reconstruct the street, put all the new utilities in under the street, put a 50-year pavement back on top of it. Out west, where those utilities still have a lot of life left in them, whether it's, some water mains might be getting close, but the sanitary sewers have a lot of life left in them. What can we do to extend the life of that street, to push it out 15, 20 years to then hit that point at which the utilities under the street need to be replaced? So you're going to start to see a lot of asphalt overlay work on Hawthorne, 145th, we're hoping to do Country Club Boulevard because we did see some good bidding this year on a lot of our road projects. We probably bid the most road projects in 1 year that we ever have for road reconstruction and rehabilitation. That's why you see that $17 million number in the slide. But we had so much savings from some of the really low bids that we've seen because contractors are hungry for the work. We might be able to even tweak out another project. And in Country Club Boulevard is one that we've discussed to do the same thing where it's an asphalt overlay over you break the concrete up underneath it and then you put a smooth asphalt overlay on the top. So those are going to be ways on how we're going to extend life of some of these streets and then hit that point where it makes more sense to, can smart investments, as Pete talked about. Okay, now it's the time to change the utilities underneath the street. So again, a little nerdy, but I think it's important to understand how we time some things. It depends on what it's put on top of. So if it's a fresh asphalt street, you can have where it's, And we're gonna try this with one of our reconstructions in the future, in the next couple of years here in the Indian Hills neighborhood, where we're gonna do a completely asphalt reconstruction. Those streets can last quite a bit, 40, plus years. Because what's nice with an asphalt street is you can easily mill off the top and put a new top course on it, even after it's starting to crack. When you're doing overlays on top of old aggregate or old subbase, like for example, the Country Club West neighborhoods, where those streets have been there since the 90s, you're hoping to get 15 to 20 years out of it. You can come back and do another overlay, or you can do reconstruction at that point. So it really depends on what's underneath it. Sometimes concrete or asphalt can last a similar life. It's all about the subbase you put underneath the road. And you probably learned more than you ever want to learn about road rehabilitation now today. So thanks,
Matt,
Mayor.
did the city do anything proactively to try to ensure that future streets are going to last for 50 years?
Yes, we did. And he knows the answer to this question because he voted for it. So it's one thing that we did was, when I was talking earlier about 35-year design life to 50-year. So one thing, when the council was reviewing, we did a study of all of our streets and evaluated the conditions, and we started to identify we have a lot of needs coming up. One thing that they proactively did for any new development or any new streets going in is we're now going to require a pavement that has a 50-year design life. What's the biggest change for that? The subbase underneath it. So the subbase and the subdrains underneath the road, making sure that that's really solid before you put that street on top of it, helps you get to that 50-year design life. Because then if you have those streets, those new streets on a 50-year design life, you've got more room in the middle for when these other streets are starting to fall apart to get caught up before those. I mean, we're making 100-year decisions here with some of the policy decisions that the council has put in front of them. So this was an important change that we made. I want to say it was 2018, 2019 timeframe when we made that change to the design of our streets. So.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, we have a question on the back row.
Has there been any discussion or thoughts about HOA communities that pay for their own streets and roads, lights, in the way of charging the residents differently than the rest of the Clive residents?
Would you like me to answer that?
That would be great.
So there hasn't been any discussions on that. And there hasn't been any changes in terms of considerations of what HOAs pay that have private streets. Not every HOA has private streets. Some townhome developments or HOA developments, when they were developed, the developer, when they were designing the development, made the choice to develop the streets in a way that did not meet the city's specifications. Either it was a narrower street or didn't meet the pavement depths that we have for a typical public street that the city will accept. So that was a choice that was made by that developer and then the property owners who invested in those properties. I'm not saying it's an easy issue, it's a tough one, but it's hard for us, for the council to consider either accepting that work or changing things because that decision was made. And it isn't easy for us because I know in terms of what you see in this presentation, most of the dollars that are going to streets, for example, road use tax, is collected by the state and then distributed to the cities. We don't even collect that tax. That's on the gas tax or when you buy a new vehicle, and those are used to maintain the streets. So even if the city doesn't have a say in terms of how that's collected by which particular resident, and that goes towards streets. So it's a very complicated situation, but as a city, there hasn't been any policy that this council's considered to have a discount for those folks who choose to live in an HOA that has a private street, to answer your question.
Other questions? Yes.
I do have a lot of people, when I talk about the interchange that's coming after these meetings, that ask that truck stop prior to, are they doing anything to allow those truckers to enter onto the interstate easier than being, within regular traffic at that stoplight, across from Lifetime? trying to enter and exit off of the interstate, or is it gonna stay the same?
I agree. They have their own ramp. Build a ramp.
So the question is related to Love's truck stop, and is anything changing? So the interchange itself is changing to make the flow of traffic on and off the interstate and through Hickman easier. It's going to be a diverging diamond. So you've seen some of these in the metro now, whether it's in Grand Prairie Parkway in Waukee or First Street in Ankeny, where you kind of go on the wrong side of the road for a little bit and then come back. So going underneath the interstate, that's how this is going to flow. So Hickman's going to have that. So it actually makes it easier for trucks getting on and off the interstate because you don't have that conflict where a semi is turning left in front of you, where could say you're going westbound on Hickman and then semi is trying to go northbound onto the interstate. We've had a lot of accidents. You know, there's been some, and that was part of what the DOT analyzed when they picked this interchange configuration, is how do you reduce those conflict points where you have turning traffic going from oncoming traffic. So that will get better. And then what you've seen here happen this last year, and we just finished up this last winter, we just have the DOT has a few minor things to finish up, but is the additional lane on Hickman between 128th and the interstate. That is preparing for the interchange to come. So that's 5th and 6th lane on the outsides will be exit only lanes onto the interchange. So that was also part of expanding that intersection to make it flow a little bit better. So good question though.
Other questions, comments? Yes.
Any new exciting businesses, corporations, retail establishments on the docket to come in the next year or two?
We do have a number of retail developments, some that were in the works that actually opened up last fall. We have a couple other projects along Hickman Road at 156th Street. Of course, the new bank that opened right there in the corner, the northeast corner. We have a Quick Start development that'll be coming in to the west of there, where we put in some of the new traffic signals right across from Fairway. So there's some infill development kind of happening in that commercial zone. We've had some redevelopment infill with a new car wash over on 100th Street, that an old Burger King property, if people remember that back in the day, that was torn down. So we've had a lot of redevelopment and infill occurring. We had a new senior living facility open up late last fall that I know a number of you were at for that ribbon cutting. So we have had those investments. There nothing specific right now that's in front of the council for consideration that we've had here recently, other than the Quick Start and a couple other developments that I mentioned. But that's kind of what's on the docket right now for the spring. Oh yeah, and then the Clive Hotel over on former Clive Hotel over on Hickman Road, right by the interstate. That is being converted. That was a huge discussion in front of the council. We had to work through a lot of questions on that. That hotel will be getting converted to a residential, multifamily residential property. Those will be apartments. So that is happening. In fact, the new sign is on the building already, and they'll be working to convert those over to regular size apartments and some micro apartments in that building for some affordable housing here in Clive, here coming up very, very soon.
Would you like to explain the name of the facility?
Sure. The joke is it is not named after Councilmember McCoy. One of the developers' son's name is McCoy. So that is where the name comes from. Or you can say it's named after Councilmember McCoy. Either way works. But
Years maybe.
But we've worked with this developer before. If you're familiar with the old Sterling Inn, now called the Vibe, conversion from hotel to multifamily that happened over closer to University. Same developer, same team. They did a great job with the Vibe project. We expect them to do a great job with the McCoy 8035 project.
Other questions? Christy, Edie, you have any parting words? Well, thank you all for coming.